Rain pounded heavily against the tin roof of Adeshawa's lodge that night, each drop falling like a drumbeat from the sky. She lay awake, restless, staring at the pages of her journal. It should have been blank, but it wasn't. Her own handwriting stretched across the paper, though she had not written a word. A chill crept down her spine. Before she could move, the window burst open with a hurl of wind, scattering her sheets across the floor. She froze. Then she saw her. A woman stood outside in the storm, illuminated by lightning. She wore a long white gown that clung to her wet skin. Her hair dripped, her bare feet gleamed on the mud, and her eyes glowed with an unearthly light. The woman raised one hand and pointed into the forest, and in the blink of an eye she was gone. At dawn, Adeshawa followed the path into the misty woods. The village still slept, wrapped in silence, yet she felt guided, almost pulled, her steps falling into a rhythm that wasn't hers. Then she saw them, fruit prints, small bare fruits and faintly glowing as though made of light. They led her all the way to the edge of the river. There, folded neatly on the bank, lay a white wrapper. It was soaked but strangely unwrinkled, as though someone had placed it there moments before. She picked it up. The instant her finger touched it, her mind split open. She was no longer herself. She was someone else. In her vision, she saw Inkem. The young woman stood tall and unshaken before the village elders. A mirror clutched in her hand, torches burned around her, and the shrine walls trembled with judgment. Her voice was calm but firm. I will not fight you. I will become the river itself. And with that, Inkem stepped backward into the waters. Her figure swallowed whole, the vision shattered. Adeshawa gasped, falling to her knees at the riverbank. The white wrapper clung to her palms, burning hot against her skin. And then she heard them, whispers calling up from the depths of the river, wrapping around her like smoke. Don't be afraid, we are one. Her heartbeat quickened. The river was speaking to her now. Later that day, shaking and desperate for answers, Adeshawa went to the headmistress. She told her what she saw, the vision of Inkem, the shrine, the words spoken. The older woman paled and lowered her voice. The place you saw, Efon, the shrine of silence, that is where the elders condemned her, where they erased her from memory. No one goes there anymore. Adeshawa met her gaze. Then that's where I must go. The headmistress trembled. If you go there, you may never return the same. Adeshawa looked at her hands, where faint watermarks now shimmered beneath her skin. I already haven't. The path to Efon was deep in the forest, overgrown and heavy with silence. Even the birds seemed afraid to sing there. At last, Adeshawa reached it, a hidden wooden door carved with vines and symbols. It creaked open under her hand. Inside the shrine was dark, its air thick with dust and memory. Strange markings covered the walls, glowing faintly like her palms. At the center of the room sat a small wooden box, a mirror drum, tucked in her bag, began to hum softly. She placed it beside the box, and instantly the lock crumbled away into dust. Inside lay a blood-stained white cloth, and nestled within it a silver necklace etched with a single name, Inkem. The moment Adeshawa touched it, her vision tore open again. She stood inside the shrine, but it was alive with firelight and the murmurs of a gathered crowd. Inkem stood in the middle, facing the elders, her chin high, her face fierce. I healed your daughters, I protected your land, and you repay me with fear, she demanded. The chief's voice thundered back. Your gifts defy our gods. You are brought in balance. You will be erased, forgotten. And one by one, the villagers turned their faces away. Adeshawa collapsed back into the present, trembling on the cold floor of the shrine, the necklace still bound in her hand. When she looked up, she caught her reflection in a shard of broken glass. Her face stared back, but her eyes were not the same. One was hers, the other Inkem's. That night, Adeshawa walked to Odoaiku River. The necklace gleamed at her throat, and in her hands, the mirror drum pulsed with life. She stepped into the shallows and began to beat it. Tum, tum, tum. The wind stilled, the stars disappeared, and then the water stirred. Rising from its center, tall and radiant, came the woman in white. No longer a ghost, no longer a whisper, but a presence that filled the air itself. In came, her voice blended with Adeshawa's own as she spoke. The silence is broken. And across the village, the bells began to ring, though no one had touched them. Drums echoed through the night. Adeshawa stood knee-deep in Odoaiku, moonlight glowing on her wet skin. Before her, Inkem rose, not a ghost now, but memory made flesh. White gown trailing like smoke, eyes glowing like fireflies. The villagers gathered by the river bank, fear in their eyes. The headmistress gasped. "It's her, the girl they drowned." The chief stiffened, hiding his trembling hand. "This is a trick," he barked. A curse returned. Adeshawa raised her voice. "No curse, only the truth you buried." Inkem lifted a hand. The river froze into glass, and visions rippled across its surface. Inkem healing children, Inkem chanting blessings, then the council meeting, the lies. The chief whispering that he saw her steal from the temple and must be silenced. Gasps shook the crowd. The chief fell to his knees. "They punished me for power," Inkem said, her voice breaking. The headmistress weeping confessed. "I saw them drown her. She never cursed us. We cursed ourselves." The villagers erupted in shame. Inkem turned to Adeshawa. "Through you, I can take them, all of them." Adeshawa hesitated. Aduke's word echoed in her mind. "She doesn't want to kill us. She just wants to be seen." Adeshawa knelt, placed the glowing necklace into the river, and whispered, "Let justice speak, but let vengeance rest." Inkem smiled softly. Her form dissolved into light, and the river breathed again for the first time in years. The villagers watched in silence. The chief wept alone. Aduke tugged Adeshawa's hand and whispered, "She said thank you." The next day, the village was still. The chief hid in his compound. No one spat at Adeshawa's feet anymore, but no one smiled either. At school, little Toba approached her. "Auntie, why does the river still cry like a baby at night?" Adeshawa froze. There had been no baby in Inkem's story. Then Adeshawa went to the headmistress' office. The headmistress sighed, her face paled. Before Inkem, there was another, an infant born under the wrong moon. The council threw her into the river. No name, no grave, forgotten. Adeshawa whispered, "So it wasn't just Inkem." That night, the wailing came, not a dream, not Inkem, a baby's cry carried across the water. Adeshawa followed it upstream. In the grass, Toba's sandals abandoned. "Toba," she screamed. The water began to swirl, soft but intentional. The drum in her hand trembled and showed a vision. A baby wrapped in clothes, falling into the river, and something washing from beneath, eyes black as void. The voice eased through the night. "She was seen, but I was never named." Adeshawa staggered back, heart pounding. She rang the village bell. People poured into the square. "The river has taken Toba," she cried. Panic erupted, but Inkem was freed. Then maybe it wasn't just her, Adeshawa cut in. She looked towards the shimmering waters, her voice low, heavy. "There is another in the river, something older, forgotten, and it is not done with us." The whole village gathered at the square at daybreak. Smoke curled in the air, and the old blind oracle sat on the ground, chalk smeared across his chest. His head was lifted towards the sky, though his eyes were closed. The people were restless, whispering, waiting. Then Adeshawa appeared, her clothes wet with river mud, her face drawn with fear and exhaustion. She raised her voice, trembling. "It is not Inkem. The river has not finished because we are not finished." The oracle tilted his head and spoke slowly, as if listening to voices no one else could hear. "There are many souls in that water. One of them has no name, no burial, no peace. When you broke the silence, you woke her. The words fell like thunder over the people, and they began to murmur. That same day, Adeshawa confronted the headmistress in her home. "You told me it was only Inkem who was sacrificed," she cried. The headmistress, shaking, opened a hidden drawer. Inside was an old scroll, cracked with age. On it were records of children, births, moons, and then red marks. No names, only symbols. They were children born in forbidden times, the headmistress whispered, her eyes filling with tears. The elders said they would bring ruin, so they gave them to the river. Adeshawa's voice broke. "You killed them, innocent children, and the river has remembered them all." Later, she returned alone to the shrine of silence. She placed a mirror drum on the stone. At first, there was nothing. Then whispers rose from the air, layered voices like children calling through broken mouths. One voice came clear above the rest. "Name me." The floor beneath her cracked, and she descended into a hidden chamber. The walls were pressed with tiny handprints, as if children had reached out and touched the stone before being lost forever. At the center of the chamber was a bowl of dried river clay. Inside it lay a rusted anklet. When Adeshawa touched it, a baby's cry filled her chest, sharp and piercing. Her whole body shook. She pressed the anklet to her heart and whispered, "I name you Irewa. You were here, you mattered." At once, the crying ceased. That night, the whole village gathered by the river. Torches burned in the darkness. The mothers wept, the fathers prayed. Adeshawa stepped forward, holding the drum and the anklet. She struck the drum slowly. The water rippled. From the river rose a child-shaped figure, made of clay and wrapped in vines. In its arms was Toba, alive and sleeping. The villagers gasped and cried out in joy. Adeshawa stepped closer and spoke gently. "You are no longer nameless, you are Irewa." The clay figure placed Toba softly at her feet, then crumbled into light and water. The river stilled. The people thought it was over, but the oracle raised his voice the next morning. "The river has returned what it took, but it has not forgotten what it owed." So that evening, the villagers gathered again. For the first time in many years, they prepared a ritual not to erase, but to remember. They molded small clay figures, one for each forgotten child. They tied white cloth around them, and Adeshawa tied Irewa's name to the smallest one. When they placed the figures into the river, they dissolved peacefully, as though the water was finally receiving them back. The surface shimmered, and a voice rose, not angry now, but powerful and calm. "You have returned what you took, but what you carried still belongs to me." Adeshawa stepped forward. "What more do you want?" The river answered, "You." And suddenly she was drawn into the water, not violently, but as though the river was inviting her. The villagers screamed, but Adeshawa turned and said calmly, "It's all right, I understand." Beneath the water she could breathe. She floated through visions, the first drowned infant, the silenced priestess, Inkem's last breath, and her own arrival in the village. Then she saw a mirror, and in it, not only her face but many others. Inkem, Irewa, the forgotten children, one face, one vessel. The river whispered, "You are the one who remembered. Will you carry us?" When she rose again, her palms glowed with golden marks, like vines wrapped into her skin. The mirror drum was silent now, its work complete. The villagers saw her and fell to their knees. Adeshawa was no longer a visitor. She had become the keeper of the river's memory. As service here ended, the capital sent a letter calling her back, but before she left, she went to the river one last time. She stood alone at the bank, without drum, without offering, only herself. The water flowed gently, alive, peaceful. A breeze touched her cheek, and a voice whispered, "Thank you, the one who stayed." Adeshawa smiled and whispered back, "I will remember." For the first time, the river shimmered with light, not sorrow, but peace. And so the story of Odoaiku ended. The river no longer ate because someone listened, and the forgotten were forgotten no more.